Prior to performing any service or maintenance on the clutch, you must first submit a service activity report. Begin by connecting to the vehicle. Turn the ignition to the on position and launch Service Ranger. From the home panel, select the Service Activity Report button and then enter the required information highlighted in red. After the report is finished downloading, close the report and send to Eaton. Prior to removing the transmission from the vehicle, the wear tab must be moved back to the new position. To do this, launch Service Ranger. Using the Go To button, navigate to the Service Routines panel. Select Open Clutch and follow the instructions on the panel. With the clutch open and using the proper tools, move the wear tab back to the new position. Turn the ignition off. By turning the ignition off, the clutch will close and keep the wear tab in place. Next, navigate to the Go To button. Select Service Routines and Service Position. Follow the on-screen instructions. This will move the finger in the service position, allowing the transmission to be removed from the vehicle. If you're unable to connect using Service Ranger, an alternative method is to remove the ECA and then manually rotate the fingers into the service position to allow the transmission to be removed. After moving the yoke fingers to clear the bearing, the ECA can be reinstalled as per OEM guidelines. Following OEM guidelines, remove the drive shaft from the vehicle. Following OEM guidelines, remove the transmission from the vehicle. Install the pilot shaft into the clutch until fully seated with the pilot bearing. Install 4 shipping bolts that are 7/16 by 14 by 1 3/4 until snug and then 1 full turn. This step will hold the pressure plate separator pins in the proper position and allow the clutch to be reinstalled and provide proper release after installation. The clutch weighs approximately 150 pounds and it is recommended that a clutch jack be used. After installing the jack, remove the 8 shipping bolts and carefully remove the clutch from the flywheel. Visually inspect the flywheel for any damage and determine if it can be reused. It is not recommended that the flywheel be turned, so if any damage is found, the flywheel must be replaced. During a clutch replacement, the pilot bearing should be replaced at the same time. Using the proper tools, remove the pilot bearing from the flywheel. If the flywheel is to be reused, thoroughly clean the pilot bearing bore, flywheel surface, and engine housing using a non-chlorinated brake cleaner or other approved cleaners. There are 4 flywheel measurements that must be taken prior to installing the replacement clutch. Both the flywheel and engine housing must meet the specifications outlined or premature clutch failure could result. Remove and replace the pilot bearing as per OEM instructions. All gauge surfaces must be clean and dry. Ensure that all the rust preventatives, grease, and oil have been removed from all contact surfaces. Failure to perform this step could result in clutch failure. The first measurement is the flywheel face runout. Secure the dial indicator base to the flywheel housing face. Put gauge finger in contact with flywheel face near the outer edge. And finally rotate the flywheel 1 revolution. Maximum runout is 0.08 of an inch. Next is the pilot bearing bore runout. Secure the dial indicator base to the flywheel housing face. Position the gauge finger so that it contacts the pilot bearing bore. And finally rotate the flywheel 1 revolution. Maximum runout is 5/1000 of an inch. The next measurement is the flywheel housing ID runout. Secure the dial indicator base to the crankshaft. Put gauge finger against flywheel housing pilot ID. And finally rotate the flywheel 1 revolution. The maximum runout is 8/1000 of an inch. The final measurement is the flywheel housing face runout. Secure the dial indicator base to the flywheel near the outer edge. Put gauge finger in contact with the face of the flywheel housing. And finally rotate the flywheel 1 revolution. Maximum runout is 8/1000 of an inch. Next, install the pilot bearing on the end of the input shaft to ensure a proper fit prior to installing the bearing onto the flywheel. Inspect the input shaft splines for any damage or excessive wear. You should also temporarily install the outer friction disc onto the shaft to ensure that there is no binding and that the disc moves freely. Inspect the input shaft release bearing bushing surface for any damage or wear. Inspect the clutch housing area for any leaks and repair as necessary. Inspect the clutch brake, roller yoke, cross shaft, and cross shaft bushings for damage or excessive wear. And finally, clean any excessive grease from the housing area from previous services or repairs to prevent clutch contamination. If equipped, check the lube tube for any cracks, damage, or leaks. Install the pilot bearing into the flywheel using an appropriate driver or using a socket or some other device that fits only on the outer surface until seated against the flywheel. Anytime the clutch is replaced, the inertia brake should be replaced as well. Begin by removing the inertia brake. Prior to installing the new inertia brake, clean the surface area thoroughly with a non-chlorinated brake cleaner. Following the instructions provided with the replacement LCIB, properly install the LCIB onto the input shaft and torque as required. Measure the flywheel bore to ensure proper fit. Next, install 2 guide studs, 7/16 by 14, into the top mounting holes. Install the clutch onto the clutch jack. Both friction discs are stamped either intermediate plate side or flywheel side. Orientate the friction disc in the proper direction and install onto the clutch jack. Slide the clutch assembly over the guide studs and install 6 lock washers and mounting bolts, 7/16 by 14 by 2 1/4, grade 5 finger tight. Remove the clutch jack. Remove the 2 guide studs and replace them with the remaining 2 lock washers and retaining bolts. Progressively tighten the retaining bolts in a crisscross pattern starting with the lower left bolt and torque to 40 to 50 foot-pounds. Failure to follow this procedure could result in improper clutch piloting and cause damage. Turn the alignment shaft to check for any binding and that the discs turn freely. Remove the caging bolts in a crisscross pattern, approximately 1/4 turn each time until fully removed. Carefully remove the aligning tool. Following OEM guidelines, reinstall the transmission. Following OEM guidelines, reinstall the drive shaft. Launch Service Ranger and using the Go To navigation button, go to Service Routines, adjust clutch. Ensure that the engine is running, and then confirm and execute the utility. The Service Ranger software then will begin to adjust the clutch. Once it's completed, you'll get a message telling you it's been completed and should show no errors.